Thank you, everybody, for joining as we jump back into our series on Yichud HaHisbodedus, this amazing work from Rav Avram Tzvi Kluger, Shlita, on the topic of personal prayer and our relationship with Hashem, and really understanding the depth of the dynamic of that core fundamental relationship that really all of life is built upon. So I'm going to share my screen so we can continue with the sources and we can follow along together. That is not it. This is it. Okay. Amazing. Just a bit higher up. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so I think we're up to here. We're up to Eis Gimel. The last thing that we learned, if you remember, was the difference between Shira Chadasha and Shir Chadash. We learned that Shira Chadasha was the aspect of the redemption from Egypt, where it was still incomplete, and therefore, in some sense, something that we experienced on our own, for ourselves, from the standpoint of us wanting something out of the redemptive process on the level of taking, like we learned. And ultimately, the final redemption is going to be Shir Chadash. It's not in the feminine terminology, which in this context is a reference to receiving, but it's rather the ultimate ability to give. And us being redeemed in a way that, like, it's so beyond our consciousness of what we might get from this. It's beyond that. It's just the ability to follow along with Hashem's plan. I think that was the title that I gave to last week's shiur, was that. It was just, Hashem, your plan is my plan. I don't, it's not about me and what I want. It's really about nullifying myself and ourselves to Hashem and to what He wants. And that's the ultimate idea here. And so that was the aspect, if you remember, of David HaMelech's pasuk in Tehillim, Ani avdech ben amasecha. Not only am I your Hashem, I'm here at your service, because that would still connote as long as it aligns with my objectives, so then I'm here. But Ani avdech ben amasecha means, Hashem, I am serving you like a person who was born into service, which means that my whole identity is bound up with yours. That my whole motivation is subservient to your motivation. And in as much as our motivations align, so then wonderful. Then, like the Gemara in Brachas tells us, Ritzaynenu lasas ritzanecha. Then our will can hopefully align with Hashem's will. But ultimately, this is the key. The key principle is this clarification. Why are we here? What are we doing on this earth? What's the ultimate purpose for which our souls descended down into our bodies for the purpose of living? V'ezras Hashem, long and happy till 120. What is the purpose? Well, what are we after in this lifetime? And it's a very important clarification that ultimately, on a very fundamental level, really goes back to the primordial nisayon, which was the challenge of Adam and Chava needing to eat from the tree of life in accordance with the will of Hashem. They were allowed to eat from all the trees, but the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra was off limits. And therein lies the clarification, although it takes many forms and guises and wears many masks. But if you trace all of the challenges that we have really back to the root, what it essentially is never the choice between good and evil. It's not even the choice between what's right and what's wrong. It is always fundamentally a choice between me or Hashem. And if you really strip back the layers, layer by layer by layer by layer, to really focus on the ultimate nisayon, it is, am I willing to forego what I want for what He wants? Or am I more than happy to go along with with what He wants, all the while that it sort of coalesces with my own personal objective? And that's that level that we're talking about here. Ani avdech ben amasecha. Not only am I an eved, I'm an eved born into avdus, that my whole metzius, my whole identity is bound up with the service, and where you go, I go. And your plan is my plan. So let's carry on here in Eis Gimel, sort of applying it more locally to the concept of Hisbodedus, of personal prayer, of our relationship with Hashem. And he continues like this. He says, "Mikan Navin, from here we can understand Beis Hadragas Haniskel El Hisbodedus. We can apply both of the aforementioned levels, the level of avdech, which is a high enough, wonderful enough level, but then the level of avdech ben amasecha, and we can address both of these through the lens of our topic, which is Hisbodedus, moments of personal prayer and conversational connection with Hashem. So he says, there are times shahanefesh nichsefes kvar ledaber im koinav lasiach hashaliba. Sometimes a person feels the urge. A person feels the necessity to go out and to spend some time with Hashem, to disconnect from the complexities and the messiness of life, and to go share a few moments of solitude and simplicity, talking out our challenges and what we're going through and experiencing in the presence of Hashem. And that's true. V'zeh tiva shel nishmas Yisrael, and ultimately this is the essential nature of the Jewish soul. That we are constantly, fundamentally, on a deep spiritual, subconscious level, at the core, we're always yearning for Hashem's closeness. This is our nature. What a beautiful line. Is that tiva shel nishmas Yisrael? This is the nature of a Jewish soul. That deep inside Shemishtoi Kekes, we're full of a longing and yearning lemekar mechtzavta, to be able to connect to the source from which we were hewn. And this is like the teaching from the Tanya, where the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe of Lubavitch, the Alter Rebbe of Shneir Zalman, writes in Tanya, the most beautiful thing on the pasuk that's very well known, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. The soul of the human being is the flame of God. Candle of Hashem. So the Baal Tanya explains over there that really, if you take a look at a flame sitting on a wick, you'll notice that it's constantly moving, it's constantly flickering, and it isn't just from side to side. He says if you look at the bottommost part of where there's contact between the flame that rises and the wick that binds it down, there's a constant jumping. There's a constant dance. And the Baal Tanya says that's because, according to the rules of science, fire in its nature really wants to jump off of whatever it is that binds it down in a more physical, corporeal sense, and all it wants is to become nullified into the source of what he calls there the Galgal Hashemish, right? Which is like the metaphysical or maybe quasi-physical source of this concept of heat embodied in a flame. It from the standpoint of the flame, it doesn't want to be a flame. It wants to be nullified at its root. But it's being anchored. It's being held down by the physicality of the wick. So it finds itself in this experience of constantly trying to pull away and then having to come back to the wick. So the Baal Tanya says that's what it means. Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. We, each and every one of us, are like that flame, and we are drawn that way, the same way a flame, a fire, is drawn upward toward the Galgal HaShemesh. You and I are drawn naturally after our Makar, which is the Ein Sof, which is the infinite. And the body is like the wick. This worldliness, physicality, is like the wick that anchors us in this reality, and we constantly find ourselves deep inside. We're longing, we're yearning, we're jumping, we're trying desperately to rise and to become elevated, and then we're pulled down because we're not angels. The angels are srafim. The word saraf is like the word to burn. They're flaming beings. They're on fire. Like the Gemara says, ant eish va'anu bisra, or ani bisra, right? The Lashon, one of the tzaddikim refers to the Sahara as fire. The angels are fire. But the human being has the angelic component, that's the neshama, and then we have the earthly component, which is the aspect of the wick. And we're constantly held in tension between these two poles. But make no mistake about it, even when we fall And even when, despite our best efforts to rise, we find ourselves on the earth again. I mentioned that recently in a shiur about the horses of the Baal Shem Tov, right, who thought that they were angels, and then, when they landed and they put some oats in front of them, the way that they stuck their whole face into the oats showed them that they were just horses, right? So we find ourselves back on that level, but don't forget that deep inside, at the core, in the deepest recesses of our essence, says Reb Kluger, is that tiva shel nishmas Yisrael. Deep inside, we this is our nature. We are essentially, fundamentally, always yearning to grow higher and to rise, even though from time to time it might feel like we lose touch with that part of us. It's always there. And that's all we ever want. Again, layer after layer after layer of our motivations. If you really trace it down to the core, what we're looking for is value. We want to be valued. We want to feel like we matter. We want to feel like we're not losing and wasting our time. We want to make sure that we didn't come down to this world for naught. And so we're constantly yearning for connection and closeness to our source. So that's true. He says, V'zu darga, going to the next page, V'zu darga achas shel alas ratzon lahashpia. That's one level of a person who goes out to Hisbodedus because they feel this urge. And they can't sit in the office for 1 minute longer because they need a break. They need 5 minutes of sanity and just to leave and to go out into nature, surrounded by the simplicity of the natural world, the silence, the solitude, and there to request from Hashem whatever it is that we're looking for. So zu darga acha shel halas ratzon hashpia. This will naturally awaken and catalyze a desire on the part of Hashem to give, achal toich kli hamakabel. But it's only because Hashem was, so to speak, presented with a vessel to fill. And so this is the level of I'm coming into the relationship with Hashem, but out of my own personal needs and my own objectives and what I seek to get out of this. But Baram, here we're talking about a different madrega entirely. And this comes out with consistency. A person who's privileged to have a consistent set practice of Hisbodedus every day, not just when we feel like it, but every day. So Baram yesh, sometimes v'halev eina margish bechlal rotzen latzes v'ledaber b'Hisbodedus. A person's really not in the mood. Right? Not only are they, do they yearn to go out and to speak to Hashem, a person's just busy. A person's stuck in a, whatever project they're working on, or they're bogged down by the responsibilities and obligations and tirdus and worries, and they don't feel like they're in the mood at all. Latzes, to leave their spot, especially if a person's actively working on something and they perceive every moment to matter and I can't pull away. They don't want at all. Latzes, to go out ledaber b'Hisbodedus and to speak to Hashem in personal prayer. Eina chaser, person doesn't feel like they're missing anything right now. Ve'eina raiv l'mu'uma, they don't feel hungry for anything. And yet, kol yitziaseh leHisbodedus, it isn't because I have something to share with Hashem and I'm bursting at the seams and I need to have a couple of minutes, in the forest, in the field, just me and Hashem alone, so I can finally pour out my heart. No. The only reason kol yitziaseh leHisbodedus, the only reason in this context that a person goes out to speak to Hashem, he ach v'rak kedei lias kli l'ratzon Hashem yisbarach, is to say, Ribbono Shel Olam, right now, I don't personally feel like I need much, but I know that I am needed. And so even though I might not need, I know that I am needed. I am a need of yours. And this flips the general model where Hashem, like we need Hashem. We're coming to Hashem to ask Hashem for things. And instead we start to see ourselves as the beings that are needed. So in that moment, Hashem, I'm here to tell you that Hineini. Not asking Hashem, ayaka, like where are you? And hoping that Hashem will respond in the way that Hashem responds, which is obviously not verbally to most of us, right? At least, or to any of us, really. Where Hashem will say, Hineini, I'm here. No, instead we come out to Hisbodedus because we hear the call of Ayeka. And I don't have anything, specific to speak about. Things are okay. I'm, sort of, the thing that I spoke to you about yesterday is still the thing that's relevant today. And it's going fine. So mitzidi, I don't have any purpose for this meeting. I don't have a need. But instead we show up to say, Ribbana Shalom, I'm just letting you know, Hineini. It's not about what I need from you. It's about being present to be able to actualize whatever light you seek to bring to the world through me. Because b'chol yom hashlichus va'inyin shehevi Hashem yisbarach manhig lifol tachas hashemesh. Every day there's a new shlichus, there's a new mission, and we don't always know what that is. So we can't even ask Hashem for help to do it because we don't know what it is. There's a special inyan that Hashem is manhig lifol tachas hashemesh, that Hashem wants to bring about on the microcosmic rather, of each of our own personal lives, and then our families, and then our community, and then our broader and broader general, our nation, the world. There are so many different layers upon which, and through which, on which reality unfolds, layer after layer after layer after layer. Every day is different. Come to Hisbodedus and say, Hashem, today I'm not here for me. I'm here for you. I'm here to reaffirm my commitment to your plan. Forget about my plan. Master of heaven and earth, because at the end of the day, I'm only here for you. And this is the bechina of Kriya Shema, the aspect of Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim, the aspect of what the tzaddikim say, that when a person gets to the end of Kriya Shema, to the word Echad, they are marich be'echad, and they sort of flesh out the letter Dalid, even though it's a bit of a paradox because the letter Dalid, by its very nature, can't be fleshed out. You can't be you can't say ech like this, that people say echad, like it's not really, because Dalet is just duh. So one of my Rabbi Yamin Feldman saw this as a very strong support for the Taimani pronunciation of a Dalet without an akuda in the middle, which instead of duh is the, like th, because then you can really draw it out, right? And so he would say echad, right? And then you can draw that out. Well, what's the kavana? The intention is that when a person has this letter Dalid echoing, reverberating in their consciousness, hopefully they're saying Kriya Shema b'kavana, that means they're totally present and they retreat inside into their inner world to be able to focus on this word. The kavana of Dalid, one of the kavanas, is that a person is mekabel on themselves Dalid misas bezdin. A person accepts upon themselves every category of death, Rachmana litzlan, if it should so come down to the necessity to give our lives al kiddush Hashem. And this is a thrice daily declaration of saying, Hashem, I'm ready to go at moment's notice. Because to live in contempt of you is not to live at all. Because my whole life is for you. And so if I know that I will carry on living in contempt of the very clear ratzon on your part, that there are certain minimal conditions that will enable a person to live in a way that will enable them to reveal the presence of Hashem. However, when faced with the compulsion to transgress one of the big three, Gili Arai, Shvichas Damim, Avodah Zarah, that even though v'chai bahem, like the Gemara in Sanhedrin Darshans, even though v'chai bahem, all the other mitzvahs, it's better to live, but those three, because they're so core and fundamental, to say, Rabbi Shalom, living in that way, like living as a Christian, to me is just not. It's not life. Because what's the point? Because existentially, the reason that I came down onto this world is to be a Jew. That's the whole. It's not what I happen to be. That I'm living, and I also happen to be Jewish, and that's my culture, and that's my religion. Even that's not what it is. It's the essence of my identity. It's more than the essence of my identity. It is the foundation for my existence in this realm for the few decades that we have here. As you take that away from me, like you take life away from me. Because that's called life. Anything else isn't called life. So it's a bit of a thought exercise to push oneself to say at the end of the day, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? In other words, who is this for? And so a person comes out into a Hisbodedus of that energy, which is a very high level, like we mentioned last week. But it's a level that's required, really. And the only way that we can ever get to this level is just to know that it exists and to help walk ourselves through the process of beginning to try to contemplate these ideas. So a person comes out to Hisbodedus and says, right now, Hashem, I'm not really in the mood. I'm not getting anything from this. It's not for me. But I want to let you know, Hineini, I'm here. I'm here as a Jew. I'm clay in your hands. Ribbon Shalom, I am actively giving myself over to you to say your plan is my plan. I don't have any other motivations. When it gets down to the more primordial, fundamental motivations that are built into my essence, if that's in conflict, so then forget it. Every project, whatever it is, I sometimes think about this, whatever I'm writing, whatever I'm working on, if I mamish come to the realization that this is not going to be marbek kvod shamayim, then what's it worth? I really, at the end of the day, because that's my whole goal. But what do I gain from it? I gain kavod because I put out a book. If it's not mamish emes, so then I'll abandon everything in the world. Because really, hopefully, at the core of what should motivate us is the truth. And the truth is that we're here for Him. The truth is that we are here as Yidden L'sakin Oila B'malchus Shakai. That the reason that we are alive, Baruch Elokeinu, like we say in Uvaletzion, Shebaranu L'chvoidoi, we're here to honor Him. So this is a kind of Hisbodedus that would motivate a person, even while they're very busy working on all their stuff, to drop that for a few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half hour, an hour, and step out of the noise of the regular mundane flow of the day and to stand in a state of readiness, to affirm this truth. That it's true. I have a whole life back there. I have all these different projects I'm working on. I have all of these aspirations and ambitions. I have stuff going on. I have responsibilities. I have roles. But a moment of Hisbodedus is the ability to stand outside all of that and take a look at all of that from a more fundamental, existentially essential standpoint. And to then, from this place, anchored in the reality that my whole life is only purposeful because of my connection to Hashem and my service of Him, to then look back and evaluate all of the various things that we're busy with and hold it up against this standard, because otherwise, what's it all worth? And you can take it to, like, if you want, just to sharpen it, you can take it to extreme. Even not Yarag Val Yavar, let's say a person offers you the most amazing job in the world, but it's against our values. It will require you to lie or to cheat. It will require you to be rude, to perpetuate injustice, whatever it is, right? So we think, well, it's a really great job. True. And a person will have lots of money and financial freedom. But is it worth it? Because really, we need money to live. But why are we living? If the way that we're earning money is in conflict with the reason that we're living in the first place, what kind of cheshbon is that? That doesn't make any sense. Meaning a person, in other words, those kinds of jobs, again, I'm using a mashal just to help us sort of put it into perspective, should not be relevant to a person who's rooted deeply in this. Because why is that? It's not even shayach for me. What are they promising me? Some cash? What is money? It's good for this world to help perpetuate the body's capacity to carry the neshama around, hopefully in good health, and with the capacities necessary for the neshama to do its job. If that's in conflict, so then that's not worth it. Because so much more fundamental of a need is it for me to be connected to Hashem than money, that in light of that essential existential sense of self and identity and purpose, it's just not relevant. It doesn't register. It's not an option. Now it's a high level of awareness. But without Hisbodedus, very difficult to get there. With moments of Hisbodedus every day, stepping out of the noise, even the holy noise, in order to share moments of simplicity and intimacy with Hashem in the most simple, straightforward way. There's no chachmas, there's no shticks, there's no, complexity, sophistication. It's just chalak. It's direct. It's a bechin of Yaakov ish tam. Simple. Ish chalak, it says about Yaakov, right? It means he didn't have hairy arms like Esav. But the tzaddikim say also, ish chalak means he was transparent. It was very smooth, very, what you see is what you get. That's what a moment of Hisbodedus offers. To reaffirm this sense of service. Instead of barging into the Hisbodedus space with, I need this, I need that. There's time for that too. But here we're talking about a higher level that probably is the result of consistency. Because consistency means even if I don't feel like it, I'm going to do it anyway. So the question is, what are you going to do anyway? What are you going to say to Hashem if you have nothing to say to Him? If you don't feel the impetus to go ahead and to have a Hisbodedus session, what's the content of the Hisbodedus session? And the answer is one word and one word only, which is Hineini. Ani avdech ben amasecha. That's it. And it's brilliant clarity. It's a lightning bolt that illuminates the whole complex maze of our lives by putting it into sharp focus, seen through the lens of our fundamental purpose on this planet. And then a person with their own words will develop the concept of Hineini, and they'll find all these different ways of expressing this to Hashem, and deepening in so doing how deeply we actually feel this to be true. Like the pasuk says in Tehillim, "He'emanti ki adaber." Rabbi Nachman quotes this in Likutei Moharan Torah Mem Vav in the second chilek, Likutei Moharan Tinyana, the 46th lesson. He'emanti ki adaber. Sometimes just by speaking out these words, it deepens the level of faith that we have. It clarifies this truth. And then we can live our lives not out of fear, but out of confidence, out of clarity. We can make decisions from a place of strength, from a place of bitachon, from a place really where if a person is mevarer and clarifies for themselves that the reason why they want to do what they want to do is not for their own kavod, but literally is laharbas b'chavad hamakom, if that's true, and a person really gets to that point and works on this, so then there's an extraordinary level of confidence, because what are you afraid of? And then there's not this fear of, I might be enticed by this, business deal. I might be enticed by this taiva, by this yearning desire. I might be led astray. Again, with clarity, there are things that will just fall outside of the realm of possibility for you, given who you are, given your principles, given your values. We learned in our Sichas Haran session, probably toward the beginning of Sichas Haran, Rabbi Nachman has a very, very wondrous lesson there about what's called yosher, which means, Rabbi Nachman says, no matter how uncouth and violent and unjust and cruel a person may look on the surface, at some point there's yashrus there. Meaning everybody has a line that they won't cross. Whatever that is. There's always going to be yashrus. Even these criminals, these gangsters, maybe here in London or in Chicago or other places where they had like a code of law. They were not the nicest, cuddliest, sweetest people in the world, but there was a code. There were certain things you just didn't do. There were certain victims that were not. There were certain acts of cruelty. Just we don't go there. And so the point that I'm making is it's already true. No matter what our madrega is vis-a-vis what we've been speaking about, think haga ba'atzmecha. Haga ba'atzmech. Think for yourself. And recognize and realize that you and me, as we currently are, already have boundaries and value-oriented limitations that would prevent us from doing, saying, right, or joining, A, B, C, D. It's just it. I'm so sorry about that. That's become like a daily occurrence when I give shiurim at this time. I have no idea why the Zoom just shuts off. Okay, let me. Okay, amazing. Now we're back on. Let me just share my screen again. Okay, so as we were saying, right, each of us already have that element where there are certain things that are just totally beyond. And so reason to believe that as we grow, as we develop, as we rise from level to level, and our consciousness expands, and our depth of feeling with regard to what Judaism is and what it means to be a Yid continues to deepen, that this clarity will continue to spread. And it will give us a platform upon which to stand that clarifies, simplifies this journey of life when a person runs it through this algorithm, as it were. So that's what we're speaking about over here. It's the consciousness of Hineini. This is showing up not just as an Ebed Hashem, but as avdech ben amasecha. That literally, when it comes down to it, I don't have any motivation. My motivations are motivations because I want to serve you, because I want to bring your light to the world, because otherwise, what am I doing here in the first place? Noyach la'adam shaloi nivra misha nivra. It would have been better not to have been created. The neshama cries when it comes down to this world, and then we comfort it by saying, it's Yerida, l'tzarech aliyah. Ultimately, it's a necessary process so that we can get even higher. Okay. But I'm not here because I want to be here. Sometimes people contact me about people, could be younger, older, people who are struggling with this sense. They're not suicidal per se, but they just, like somebody sent me a message, there's somebody that he knows about, somebody he knows who told him that he is not adverse or averse to doing dangerous things because he doesn't really care one way or another. He's not suicidal. He just doesn't want to be here, As if this consciousness is some kind of problem. Now, it's a problem if it's dangerous, in which case call emergency services immediately and the person needs to have psychiatric care. And that's obviously. But if a person feels this sentiment, it's not a problem. That's exactly the sentiment that we should be feeling. None of us want to be here. None of us, any thinking person, that we don't want to be here. Our neshama is in incredible pain in this world. Our neshama was cut away from its source, from a realm of infinite bliss and consciousness and goodness and sweetness in ways that we can't even imagine. Yafa sha'achas, koiras ruach, kol chai olam hazeh. Like that should be the foundational principle, that feeling upon which all of our Jewish experiences are built. Noyach loyla adam shaloi nivra misha nivra. It would have been better not to be created. So we're not here to put our feet up and have a great time. It's not a great time. There are some times that are beautiful and momentous and sweet. There's no question about that. And I bless myself and all of us that we should experience those moments. That's for sure true. But this is a world of pain. Adam la'amal yulad. A person was born to toil. There's work to do. Hashem put Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden in Gan Eden, la'avda u'lishamra. They weren't created just to enjoy themselves. There was work to do. They had to cultivate the earth. On whatever level they needed, the earth needed cultivation. We're told that, bread just grew from trees and the angels are, making them all their food, whatever. But on whatever level there was work to do, there's work to do. So on the contrary, I think that it's counterintuitively, it's a good sign when a person starts feeling that way. All the while, again, that it's not mamish suicidal ideation, chas v'shalom, lo yaleinu. But then, if guided properly, they can lean into that feeling and then come to a much broader appreciation for why we're here. Because none of us want to be here. We were sent here. There's work to do, not for us, for Him, for it, for that which we can't even express. And that's the consciousness that we're speaking about over here. Ben amasecha. I don't have any personal desires. Whatever my desires are, that's because given my brain and my heart, I've come to this estimation that this is probably the closest way that I could imagine, serving you and figuring out how I can be of service. That's why I want what I want. Only because I perceive this to be the best way to live vis-a-vis that ultimate purpose, but it's not for me. I am a vessel nullified to whatever it is that you decide to do with me. And I'm here for the ride. Because it's not things are not going my way, that they're going your way always. When things go my way, when things don't go my way, they're going your way. And in that moment of Hisbodedus, of Hineini, of ben amasecha, I'm reaffirming that principle. This is what my whole life is about. This level is an incredible level, which is a desire to receive and to be found. But it's all oriented toward the giver and not focused with the gravitational center in the consciousness of what we can receive. So he says, there's a really difficult point here. When a person is hungry, person feels like they're lacking, they're missing something. So then a person knows what they're missing and they understand why they came to Hisbodedus. There are different layers that we received in the past. And now a person comes into Hisbodedus with a desire to complete and a desire to gain. But a person who comes into the space of Hisbodedus not with a ready vessel of what we can gain, but the desire to give, the desire to show up with presence, with a consciousness of bittul. He doesn't know what he's coming to get. He doesn't know. It might be something he appreciates. It might be something that's more challenging. He's not hungry, he's not thirsty, he's not yearning for something. We're not speaking about his vessels. We're speaking about what Hashem has in mind. Okay, and therefore, Amar Hashem Yisbarach, Hashem says, Loichein avdi Moshe. This was the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. So again, we're speaking about incredibly high levels, but like it says, if we don't know where we're going, we'll definitely never get there, right? We have to know where we're going. We have to know that these madrigas exist, that they're available, like we can work toward them. We can think about them. We can work on them. But this was the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem said, Loichin avdi Moshe. Moshe is different. Bechol beisi nemanhu. Among my whole household, so to speak, Moshe Rabbeinu is neman. Peh el peh adaber boy. I will speak to him face to face, mouth to mouth, u'tumunas Hashem yabit, and he will perceive visions of God. Peh el peh hu dargas hanoisein mitzad hashpa'asai. This aspect of peh el peh, mouth to mouth, face to face, is when the receiver is one with the giver. And the receiver doesn't come as an independent entity looking to get from the source. He's nullified. Not for the purpose of what he could receive, just nullified to the source. So now, because it's true that this personal prayer is the highest, sweetest, most direct serving of Hashem that we can imagine, because like we said, there's nothing complicated about it. It's just literally talking to the divine. It's just super straightforward. We should do so binding ourselves up with those tzaddikim who represent this ideal. That even though we might not be there yet, and I say yet, and if you can find a chance to listen to my shiur from yesterday on Sichas Haran, I say yet because all of us are expected to get there. But right now, we're working toward it. But all the while that we haven't yet achieved that level, we can bind ourselves in heart and mind with those who already have. Like it's written in the sefer Noam Elimelech from Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, Schus Yaganalein Parshas Eikev. And he says, what does it mean, when you shall listen? Eikev means, like in that context, it means it will be when, like Eikev Tishman, when you shall listen. But the word Eikev, of course, means a heel. And so this is a reference to people who are on a lower level, who are not yet capable to show up with this Hineini energy, b'chol lev v'chol nefesh, which is a very high madrega, as mentioned. But they bind themselves, they seek to emulate those who already got there. That's their celebrity, that's who they emulate, that's who they want to be like. People who really do recognize the greatness of Hashem. And people who literally are serving Hashem with great self-sacrifice and willingness to let go of everything, as long as they knew that that's what the ultimate objective of Hashem is. If we yearn to reach these levels, if we bind ourselves in heart and mind with those who have attained this consciousness of service, with a total lack of any of our own personal motivation, and a desire to be clay in the hands of the master craftsman, so then in some sense we are included in their avoda, and in some sense we're already there, because that's where we want to be, because we emulate the tzaddikim who are living on that level. Even if we're not really there yet, that's where we're headed. And that's pshat on the pasuk. V'haya eikev tishma'an es hamishpatim ha'ele kanal. Sha'anashim abchusim b'sichlam yishmu v'yichaber es atzmam ol oisam ha'tzadikim ha'yoidim hamishpatim ha'ele. V'haya eikev tishma'un es hamishpatim ha'ele. When those who are eikev, who are on the level of the heel, who are on the lowly level, bind themselves together with those who are on the level, or serving Hashem in this way, then ushmartem asisem. It will be considered like you already did it. Oisam, Ratzalaymar, as if to say, it will be considered like you've served Hashem on that level. And that's what David HaMelech says, Nafshi LaHashem mishoymrim laboiker. Shoymrim laboiker. My soul is to Hashem, mishoymrim laboiker. Literally means more than those who long for dawn, I long for the coming of the redemption. But says the Na'am Melech, this means to say, Kishani mendabik atzmi laHashem. Nafshi laHashem. When I, on my own tiny little level, strive to get closer to Hashem, mishoymrim laboiker, because of those tzaddikim who are called shoymrim laboiker, those who really are serving Hashem on the highest level. And as a result of watching them, I want to emulate them. So that's why Nafshi LaHashem, that's why I try to bring myself into proximity with Hashem like they do. Then you know what happens? Shoymrim laboiker. Then I am also considered to have reached that level, even though on a real, in reality, I'm still very, very far removed. But because I bind myself with these tzaddikim, and I learn their teachings, and I try to fulfill their advice, and I try to understand and grasp the levels that they had reached and were attempting to communicate to every single person, on every level, and that's where I'm headed, so then in some sense, I'm already there. And then bit by bit, I'll try to work myself day after day, Hisbodedus session after Hisbodedus session, Hineini after Hineini, clarifying this principle. Why am I alive? That's why Hisbodedus in Breslov is called Yichud HaHisbodedus, means to settle the mind. There's so much noise. And the ability to take time out in the middle of the day and to spend some time connecting to the ultimate core principle upon which everything else relies. What a gift. And we're already there. And this will help us along our journey step by step. So like all of our learning that we do together, but this learning specifically, loy halimudu ha'ikr, the main thing is not the learning of it. The main thing is hamaisas, the implementation of it. If we can make the decision, if we're not already doing so, to spend time every day, even when we're not in the mood, maybe specifically when we're not in the mood, to literally close our laptop, and we have lots of stuff to do, maybe even good and important things to do. Whatever it is that we're engaged with and stuck in, to disengage and to spend time contemplating the purpose for it all, which ought to be Ritzaynenu lasis ritzanecha. I want to do what you want from me. That's what I want. I was created, Baruch Elokeinu shabaranu l'chvaydai. I was created to service you. Hineini. Master of heaven and earth, Hineini. I'm here. And then after that, I'm going to go back into the noise of life. But now I have the lenses through which to see everything and to make decisions with clarity. And to have the confidence and the conviction of my identity. That might not mean that all of a sudden life is easy or perfect or even enjoyable. It's a consciousness of mission. It's misirut. It means b'shvili nivra olam. The world is mine to do my little part to fix. In the way that no Jew before me until now ever could, and in a way that no Jew from me until the coming of Mashiach ever will. I'm sent to this world for a unique mission. Ribbon Shalom, please help me find that. Master of heaven and earth, that's the only thing that I want is to have made something of my life and to be using the short moments that we have here to make the world a little bit brighter for you. Whether I do that at the office, in a mundane sense with business dealings, so that I could earn enough money to be able to support my family and to give parnasa and to have hachnasas archim and to host Shabbos guests. And that's what I'm able to do. That's lefi my shor sheshama. Or it's a more overtly spiritual, like my humble self, that I have the privilege of doing this for a living. What a privilege, right? And so that makes it a little bit more clear. But even then, there's the struggle. Who is it really for? Is it for my ego? Is it for my covet? Is it for my, platform? And we have to be mevarer that millions of times, and to keep coming back to this clarity of like, if I knew that this was not what I was supposed to be doing, klape shmaya, I would shut it down immediately, according to my mind and my heart, and with the guidance of Rabbeim, and knowing my personal talents and abilities and my shor sheshama. This is the best that I could come up with. I'm trying my best to bring light to the world in these unique ways. But if it was clear to me that this is not what Hashem wants, like, I don't need this for me. That's the madriga that we're aiming for. And Hisbodedus can help a person make this clear. Hisbodedus gives the person the time and the space to be able to work on this clarity. And then, anchored in that clarity, to come back into life. And like Rabbi Nachman said of his youth, when he would come back from Hisbodedus, he would see an olam chadash legamri. The whole world was new. It was mamish the same world, but everything was different. Okay, so I think we're gonna stop here a little bit early. First of all, because we're up to a new section. Also, because my laptop charger broke. A new one is coming a little bit later, and the computer's about to die. So I think this is a great place to end today's shiur, and wishing everybody the most wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And if you haven't yet, now's a good time to think about taking the couple of minutes to step out of the noise and to step into the space of Hisbodedus. B'ezras Hashem. Okay, Asher Koach, thank you everybody for joining. Wishing everyone the most incredible rest of your day and a wonderful week. Continuation of the week up ahead. Should only hear good news, B'ezras Hashem. Asher Koach, thank you everybody. Thank you for joining. שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי, מלך חי וקיים, על כל נשימה שאני